I would like to bring up our keynote speaker, Chairman of the Cannabis Control Commission, Stephen Hoffman.
Okay. Thank you, Steve. I said, I thought you were going to take care of me, Sid.
You'll stay right here.
So I think I'm just going to have to follow in Steve's tradition and go off script as well. I had prepared remarks, and I'll do that. But first, you know, I've been in this job a little bit over 2 years, and one of the great pleasures of this job is the number of people I've met from all walks of life. You know, government officials, local officials, people in the industry, advocates. It's been actually by far the most enjoyable and rewarding part of my job. One of the first people I met was Steve, and I don't remember exactly how long it was into my my term, but it was relatively soon. And Steve, you know, reached out to me, didn't know who he was, and he said, "Can I come by?" And he said, "By the way, do you mind if I bring my dog?" I said, "No, I like dogs. I've got 2 of my own." And so Steve and Sid showed up in my office. I said a month or 2 into my tenure, and I've known Steve now for probably 2 years. I mean, a little bit longer, and. You know, I've met a ton of people in this job, but I don't even think I've met anybody that's as sincere in their beliefs, that is trying to do good, not just for himself, but for everybody around him. The thing that's most important, there are a lot of people out there with good intentions. There aren't a lot of people that have had the impact that Steve has had. And you know, this legislation, which I completely support and have agreed to write a letter to the legislature supporting. I did mention, Steve, I've got meetings with both the Senate President and the Speaker of the House in the next 10 days, and I'll raise it with both of them. So that's yet to be determined, but even without that, up to this point, Steve has just had an enormous impact on just an incredible number of people in this industry. It's been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure getting to know Steve. So I have 7 minutes to talk about something I can talk about and have talked about for 6 hours or more, so you're going to get the high level. I mentioned I've been in this job for a little over 2 years. The commission was appointed September 1st of 2017. Our first retail licenses for adult use were issued a little less than a year ago, November 20th of 2018. And I have 2 years, 10 months, and what's it, 26, 5 days left in my term, not that I'm counting. But you know, it does cause me to be reflective, and I've said many times, I actually feel very good about what the commission has done. We have taken from a standing start in industry and put it in place. We have issued over 200 licenses. We have 30 retail stores. We have 66 total marijuana businesses operating. We've taken over the medical program, and there are 53 medical dispensaries operational around the state. And we've done it with you know, not a lot of hiccups. I will certainly understand if some or most of you in the audience are on the side of the debate that says we're moving too slowly. But I will tell you that for every time I hear we're moving too slowly, I hear we're moving too fast, which means I think maybe we're getting it right. That being said, we are not complacent in the slightest. We have a ton of work to do. I would not have taken this job, nor would the other commissioners have taken their jobs, if we weren't completely committed to implement all aspects of the law. And the law is pretty complicated. It requires us not only to issue regulations and licenses, but it requires us to do research. It required us to impanel a special commission on driving under the influence. It required us to do a public awareness campaign. In our spare time, it required us to figure out special regulations for Martha's Vineyard in Nantucket, which is a IQ test that I'll talk to people about in the hall afterwards about why Martha's Vineyard in Nantucket needed special regulations. But it also has some very important dimensions the law does about what the lawmakers, what the citizens who voted on question 4, what they wanted this industry to look like in terms of diversity. And when they were talking about diversity, they weren't talking about just gender and ethnicity. They were also talking about including veterans and disabled people and LGBT people. They were also talking about diversity in terms of the size of businesses. You know, there are big businesses in this industry, as you know, but the law is very explicit that they want to make sure there's room for smaller entrepreneurs, for small farmers, for craft cooperatives. That's incredibly important. And then, of course, you know that the law has a major social equity component, which requires us to ensure that those members of communities that were disproportionately harmed by marijuana prohibition are full participants in the industry. And it's an explicit and incredibly important part of the law. And I will tell you, as I reflect on where we are 2 years into this adventure, we're not where we need to be on the issues of diversity, on the issues of social equity. I think we've done a lot, and I think we've had some impact, but we have a lot more work to do. I'm pleased at some of the things we've done. We have given priority to what we call economic empowerment candidates. They come to the front of the queue. These are people from those communities that were disproportionately harmed. We have just started a social equity program. We started providing training and mentorship to people that come from those communities. We have discounted our application fees and our license fees for certain members of those communities. We have just agreed for veterans, minorities, and women to bring them to the front of the queue. We can't put them in front of the medical dispensaries, that was done by law, but we can bring them to the front of the general applicant pool, and we've just done so. We also, and this was not just for veterans, but we also just waived the $50 fee for the annual medical card. And I think, as long as we're here to praise Steve, I'll give him a lot of praise for that, because he was one of the most outspoken and compelling advocates for doing so. So I'm really pleased we could take that step. We have also just agreed to create 2 new categories of licenses, one being for home delivery and one being for social consumption. And there's several dimensions that are important there. One is I saw on, where's Dr. McNabb? I saw on Dr. McNabb, one of her slides, that one of the issues, it wasn't the leading issue, but one of the issues about that was hurting veterans and their ability to consume marijuana medication was they had no place to do so. Social consumption will hopefully allow that to do so. Now we got to change, so we got several things in the legislation we have to change. One is to make that possible. But both social consumption and home delivery are going to be offered as licenses exclusively to economic empowerment and social equity applicants for 2 years. So we're going to give them a chance to get a head start in this industry. We recognize the law required us to prioritize medical dispensaries in giving out adult use licenses, and unsurprisingly, if you look at the industry right now, is heavily weighted towards those dispensaries. They are the ones that knew the industry, that had their local knowledge, they had the money, the resources, and so if you look at the 30 retail stores that have been open so far, most of them are medical dispensaries that have now co-located in an adult use facility, and that's an inevitable outcome of the law. One of the benefits of moving at the pace we've moved at, which I think is, as I said before, the right pace, is we got lots of time. I do have 2 years, 10 days, and 10 months and 5 days left in my term. It's going to take that long to get this right, I believe. But we have 30 retail adult use stores open in the state right now. I think the state can easily handle, from a demographic standpoint, 200 to 250 stores. So the door is not closed. The opportunity is not there. It's still there. We have a ton of work to do. We have to figure out a way to help people get financing to open stores and to open cultivation and manufacturing facilities. We have to get the city and town local process, the host community agreement process, working so that it is not a barrier to entry for the people we're trying to help. So we have a ton of work to do, but we have a total commitment to get that work done. And as I said, I got at least 2 years, 10 months, and 5 days to get it right, and we will get this right. I am totally committed, as are my fellow commissioners. We're going to get this industry to look the way we want it to look like, which is we want it to look like the state of Massachusetts. In terms of diversity, in terms of participation of all members of our community, and I am committed to make that happen. I'm really pleased to be part of this evening tonight. Thank you very much for the invitation, and I think what you guys are doing is noble, so it's a pleasure to be part of it. Thank you very much.